And our first guest this morning is Tomás McCarthy with Waterford Sport and Waterford Local Radio. Tomás, how are you keeping?
Morning, Jack. Morning, Matt.
Looking forward to the weekend's games?
I'm not sure. Looking forward is the phrase, Jack, given the form that Limerick have shown over the past couple of years, and even a couple of weeks ago in the league final. But yeah, look, it's going to be a tremendous couple of weeks with the round robins starting like week in, week out. You're going to get quality games, and look, it's going to be it's going to be a heck of a couple of weeks ahead.
Yeah, I suppose when you came on the call there before we went live, Matt was saying we're Waterford waiting in the long grass. Is that kind of the feeling below there in the Deise?
Yeah, I think so, Jack. Like it's been very low key, especially compared to last year when there was a lot of anticipation of Waterford challenging Limerick, Waterford possibly lifting Liam McCarthy. They were going into that Munster Championship as league champions after a tremendous win over Cork, but fell very flat in the summer. Capped off by that heavy defeat against Clare. This time around, Waterford have taken a different approach to the league. They've probably played in fits and starts. Beat the teams they're expected to beat in Antrim and Laois. Drew with Dublin, lost to Kilkenny and Tipperary. Waterford didn't really play their full team in any of the games, so it's been a completely different approach. And like the next couple of weeks will show whether that'll pay off.
You just mentioned they're not playing with a full team. There's obviously been word of a few injuries. Who is out, we'll say, definitely for Sunday.
Yeah, I was speaking to David Fitzgerald last week, Jack, and Austin Gleeson is out with a hamstring injury. Picked that up against Tipperary. He hasn't played a full 70 minutes so far this year, so obviously that's a big blow. I think he'll be back for the Cork game, all right. Iarla Daly is also with a hamstring injury. Picked it up against Kilkenny. That's another setback to Waterford, because I'd imagine he would have been earmarked to mark Aaron Gillane, especially after the job he did against him in the first half of last year's Munster Championship game. I thought it was a big turning point when Daly went off injured that night and Waterford had to change around their defence. And also Shane McNulty is out, another key defender, another regular over the past 9 or 10 years or so. He's out with a broken bone in his foot. So they are 3 injury blows, and like Waterford's squad wouldn't be as deep as Limerick's is. So they are definitely 3 setbacks for Waterford heading into this game.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's squad is as deep as Limerick's, thank God, at the moment. But I suppose you're missing those lads. Patrick Fitzgerald is obviously involved heavily with the 20s. Will he be saved for Sunday?
I imagine he'll play some part on Sunday, Jack, whether that's starting or coming off the bench. He actually didn't start any of the league games, which I was surprised. I thought he would maybe start one of them. But look, he's a super talent. Maybe didn't show it all the time for the under-20s, but like he'll be one that Limerick will have to keep an eye on when he comes on. I imagine he'll feature at some stage, whether that's in a starting role or off the bench. Padraig Fitzgerald is another one to look out for. Did quite well at stages during the league. Really lit up the Fitzgibbon Cup as well with SETU Waterford. And Fitzgerald is really the big name around here, because Mark Fitzgerald is another one of the under-20s that I think will start, considering Waterford are down so many bodies in defence. I think he might start, whether that be in the full back line or half back line. So they're probably the 3 players to emerge. Conor Ryan as well could feature in defence. He got a good run of games during the league as well. So they're probably 3 or 4 the newer names that have come on the scene during the league.
Yeah, I suppose Limerick isn't the team you want to come into with injuries in your defence. Conor Prunty and Tadhg de Burkish should be all right though, and that'll be a huge boost, because in 2020 All-Ireland final, when Tadhg went off, it seemed to change it. And you mentioned when Iarla went off last year, that if you can keep your starting 6 on the field for the 70, it'll go a long way in trying to stop Limerick. Exactly,
Tadhg has had he's been through the mill in terms of injuries, as you mentioned there, the 2020 All-Ireland. He suffered another setback last year as well, didn't finish out the championship. But his return to the defence during the league really settled Waterford in the Tipperary game and in the Kilkenny game. And I expect that Waterford will set up with a sweeper on Sunday. I think they will set up with 7 defenders. I think Tig will be sitting almost as kind of a fourth member of the full back line, if you like. And I think that really solidified the defence, because Waterford were leaking a couple of soft goals during the early stages of the league, but he's a really steady and influence. And Conor Prunty, another very important member of the defence. His form was a little bit patchy at the start of the league, but he has gone head to head with Aaron Gillane in the past, and I expect that he'll take up that mantle on Sunday. They've had a couple of great battles during over the years, like both league and championship, and Prunty won an All-Star a couple of years ago, probably on the back of his displays against Gillane. So I'd expect those two to come face to face again on Sunday.
Yeah, from what I've seen anyway, Prunty has done the best job on Gillane for the last few years. But that's one key matchup. If you're saying Tig is going to sit, who will be given the job, Martin Keane-Lynch?
Oh, that's a big one, Jack, isn't it? I mean, like he looks to be like he was never away, really, Keane. Especially his performance against Tipperary, like when they needed a man to win primary ball, he was there. Like he just knits to play together. It might be a job maybe for 1.5 hours to come back. The likes of Neil Montgomery, Jack Prendergast, they're real workhorses around that middle third. You'll also have Jack Fagan, Caleb Lyons around there. Now they'll bomb forward as well as carry out their defensive duties. They will really bomb on. I thought Caleb Lyons was probably Waterford's standout player of the league, and he got 11 points from play. I think he could really thrive under Davy Fitzgerald. We didn't see a lot of ball going into the inside forwards during the league, which was a source of frustration really down here. Especially the role that Deise Hutchinson played. Waterford shooting a lot from distance. I think we'll see more of that on Sunday. Caleb Lyons kind of thrives in that. So I think it might be down to maybe one of the midfield men, 1.5 hours, maybe the likes of Montgomery or Prendergast or someone like Darragh Lyons maybe to pick up Keane-Lynch in around that middle third.
Yeah, and finally for me, before I go to Matt, you kind of mentioned there that Deise played with a withdrawn role. Could it be a case of Davy not trying to show his hand early on in the league with one eye on Limerick from, I suppose, February time?
I think so, Jack. I think so. I think if there was any member of the Limerick backroom team in the stand for particularly the matches against Tipperary and Kilkenny, I don't think they would have learned a whole lot about Waterford, to be honest about it. I think Deise will be back inside on Sunday alongside Michael Kiley as well, who missed a large chunk of the league, got sent off against Laois earlier on in the season. I think you'll see Waterford put in a few balls into Deise, into Michael Kiley inside. They'll be like a twin threat inside there. I think Waterford look to mix it up a bit. I think you'll probably see early on Waterford shooting a lot from distance. Davy has referenced the All-Ireland semi-final last year between Limerick and Galway getting off a lot of shots in the first half. I think we said Galway got off 27 shots in the first half of that game. So I think Waterford will shoot on sight maybe at the start, but then maybe put in a few balls into Deise and into Michael Kiley. Davy says he's looking for a mix of long ball, short ball. I think we'll see that on Sunday. I think he is holding something up his sleeve. I think Waterford supporters are hoping that he has something up his sleeve for Limerick this weekend. Yeah,
sorry, no, just cutting ahead of you again, Matt. But Mikey Kiley, obviously, he's going to be known to the Limerick people for his exploits. UL, he's obviously been the star man in Fitzgibbon for the last 2 years. There's obviously a real hope that he'll transfer that into the senior.
Absolutely, Jack. And we see nowadays, it's usually 2 men inside the full forward line, and he's a great target man inside. He can fend off 2 or 3 defenders, and he's a real eye for goal as well. Once he gets that ball in hand, he goes straight for goal, and we saw that in the Fitzgibbon final just down the road in Waterford, when he got 4 goals. So yeah, he's Michael Kiley and Deise Hutchinson could really play off each other, and I think we'll see some balls going into around the edge of the square, and that'll be a fair battle between the 2 Mikes, Mike Kiley and Mike Casey, on the edge of the square this weekend.
Yeah, it promises to be very exciting inside there. Matt, I'll throw it over to you.
Tomás, thanks for coming on with us indeed. how important from a Waterford point of view will be a big performance from Jamie Barron?
Oh, huge, Matt. Like, he didn't play a full 70 minutes of hurling last year. Like, he missed the entire league. He only came back for the start of the Munster Championship, and then he went off after about maybe 15 minutes against Clare. Like, so we didn't really see the real Jamie Barron. And during the early stages of the league, like, he really seems to be back to his brilliant best. Like, you know, working back, driving at defences. He probably has the best sidestep in hurling, I think. You know, just weaving and bobbing out of traffic. You know, great player to watch when he's in full flow. Capable of scoring 3 or 4 points from play as well. Probably hasn't had his best games against Limerick. I think, you know, Will O'Donoghue has probably had the upper hand in those duels over the years, and we've even seen Jamie been moved inside to the full forward line at times against Limerick. So I think he'll be out to prove a point as well. He would have been disappointed getting the red card as well against Tipperary, but it's great to see Jamie Barron back to full fitness. And you know, if Waterford are to put it up to Limerick this weekend, you know, he'll have to have a big display.
Yeah, I was just asking Tomás there. He referenced about the Waterford wing backs bombing forward. His strategy with the like of Tomás and 𝘕𝘠𝘬𝘪𝘢𝘵 Hegarty around.
Yeah, like, you'd have to get the balance right, Matthew, like between attacking and defending. But yeah, that's going to be a real conundrum. Like, who are Waterford get to pick up those two? Because like, the two of them have great records against Waterford. Like, especially in that 2020 final, they did all the damage, Hegarty and Morrissey. But I do think you'll see, you know, those Waterford defenders really bombing on. I think Waterford had 23 different scorers during the league, like, including the likes of, you know, Conor Prunty, who wouldn't be even noted for his scoring. So I think you will see those Waterford backs driving forward and also shooting a lot from distance, but they will have to, you know, mind the house as well and keep an eye on those very dangerous Limerick forwards. So there's definitely a balancing act to be got there from Davy.
Then to go to the other side of the field, you know, what strategy are Waterford going to have to try and break through what is the best half-back line probably in the country, the Limerick half-back line? Like, you've got the hurler of the year there, you've got Dermot Burns, and you've got Kyle Hayes. That's Limerick's likely lineup.
Yeah, I think the last thing that Waterford want to do will be, you know, hitting high ball on top of those three, Matt. Like, you know, like, the best half-back line in the country, you know, by a mile. Like, there's absolutely no question about that. You know, I think Waterford will be going short off the puck outs. They've been working a lot on their puck out strategy. You know, everybody outside their own 45 and working the ball from there. I think we'll see a little bit more of that on Sunday. I can't see Waterford, you know, driving ball on top of those three, and Waterford don't probably have the ball winners either to compete for that type of ball either. Especially since Michael Brick-Welch retired, Waterford don't really have a kind of a noted ball winner around that area, and also the fact that Austin Gleeson is going to be injured as well, so you don't have any obvious target man under those puck outs. So I expect Waterford to go short, and I expect Waterford to, if they get in any type of space, that they'll be shooting from distance, and maybe try and force the Limerick half-back line to come out a little bit and maybe not sit as deep as they normally do, and maybe then pop in a few balls into Deise Hutchinson and Michael Kiley. I expect that's the way Waterford will go about it, because they won't want to be landing puck outs on top of Burns, Hannon and Kyle Hayes.
Yeah, there's no doubt at all, but Deise Hutchinson and Michael Kiley will be a serious twin threat, but they will be coming up against two excellent cornerbacks in Sean Finn and Barry Nash. Barry Nash, who's been outstanding in the league semi-final, and this is a statistic that 12 of the starting Limerick 15 scored. Everybody from Barry up scored, and Barry Nash, of course, got that great goal in the league final. He's going to cause a...
Oh, absolutely, Matt. Like, and this is the thing that I've really noticed about Limerick, and especially in the league final and league semi-final that you mentioned, is that more their backs are getting on the score sheet and more their backs are driving forward, and you could see that with Ballynash in the league final. Declan Hannon is getting on the score sheet more often. Like Dimmer Burns always chips in with a couple as well, but that's something that Waterford are going to have to be wary of. Like, if they do bring bodies back, they'll have to keep an eye out for the likes of Ballynash, for the likes of Kyle Hayes, raiding forward. That's something that they're going to have to be really, really wary of. And like you mentioned, Waterford have a lot of scorers. Limerick have a ton of scorers as well. They've threats in all areas of the field, and it's going to be very, very difficult for Waterford to stop.
I'm gonna cut back in there, Matt. Tomás, the fact that you'll be playing the home games again in Thurles, is it as big a deal as it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago that you've had a campaign away from home? You're used to it now.
Well, I think Semple Stadium is probably a home away from home for Waterford, really. Jack, I don't think the players really mind, lining out there. I don't think the supporters mind going there. I don't think it's a huge factor. But obviously it probably levels up the playing field, really. I'm sure Limerick would much prefer to be going to Semple Stadium rather than going to Welsh Park. So I don't think it's a massive factor. And even the management team have said they won't be really using it as an excuse. If Waterford go out of the round robin early as they did last year, I don't think you could really put that forward as a major reason or excuse for that, I don't think.
Yeah, and I suppose starting with Limerick then as well, would you have preferred maybe not facing the All-Ireland champions first out, or does it give you a chance to regroup if it doesn't go your way, and if you put in a good performance, gives you confidence?
Yeah, look, it's probably not the opening game that you want, really, especially the form that Limerick are in. It's probably the last thing that you want. I think the big thing for Waterford is they need a performance. They need something to cling to, really. I don't think we've seen the real Waterford probably since that game against Limerick this time last year in the Gaelic grounds in the Munster Championship, when they got within a score of Limerick, and the ball was landing around the square deep into injury time, and Nicky Quaid ran out, and there was a massive roar in the Gaelic grounds that night. Since then, Waterford haven't really performed. We're flat against Cork, collapsed completely against Clare. Have only played in patches during the league. So, Waterford need a performance, I think, on Sunday. They'll probably be hoping to bring Limerick down the stretch. I think they're probably looking at the bigger picture, Jack. I think Cork is going to be probably a season-defining game as it was last year. I think Waterford will probably have a lot of their injured players back for that game. They're talking about maybe looking at the Munster Championship in 2 blocks, looking at the Limerick and Cork game as Limerick and Cork games as the first block. If they were to get 2 points out of those 2 games, I think Waterford would be really, really happy. What Waterford don't need on Sunday is a really heavy and damaging defeat, because then confidence would be really low going to play Cork in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in round 2.
Yeah, and I suppose history will tell us that Limerick have had a huge adventure over Waterford. There was obviously heavy wins in 18 and 19 in the round robin, and then Munster and All-Ireland finals, All-Ireland semi-final. But the most recent encounter was definitely the most positive for Waterford, and there has to be something from that, even though, Cian Lynch got injured the same day. You mentioned Dearla Daly went off, and Aaron Gillane, scored all around him afterwards. That you have to take confidence from that most recent encounter.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Deise Hutchinson had a terrific game that night on Sean Finn, and that doesn't happen very often to Sean Finn. And that's another matchup to really look forward to on Sunday, is the battle between those two. So yeah, there is positives to be taken, but as you mentioned, Limerick have had the upper hand over Waterford ever since John Kiley took over. I think it's 6 championship games, 6 wins, and some of them, pretty emphatic. I think looking at Sunday's game, I think the big difference is the strength and depth that Limerick have. I think Limerick, panel wise, look even stronger than they did last year, especially with Cian Lynch and Peter Casey now back fit. They've great options to come off the bench, and I think that could be the decisive factor between the two teams on Sunday, especially when it comes to the final quarter. I think Limerick just have that strength and depth.
Matt, I'll throw it back over to you there, because I did cut across you there as you dropped.
Yeah, just reflecting on it, Tom, Waterford seem to have a very fraught and frosty relationship with the round robin series. They've played 12 games to date and just one win, and that was against Tipperary last year. In the immediate aftermath of winning the league, put your finger on why Waterford haven't adapted to the system like the other four counties.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's probably something that everyone is trying to figure out down here, Matt. I think if you look at it, I think it's probably the injuries to key players is probably one of the factors I put it down to. If you look back at the first year that Waterford went into it in 2018, they went down to Clare and lost a heap of key players in the very, very first match. If you look back at last year, Waterford also lost a lot of players due to injury. Jamie Byrne, 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 𝘔𝘦𝘯𝘪𝘢𝘵 Conor Prunty earlier daily, as I mentioned earlier. So going into this campaign, it's so important that Waterford keep their main men fit. And some of them have been pretty injury prone over the years, the likes of Austin Gleeson, Conor Prunty, 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 𝘔𝘦𝘭𝘴, Jamie Byrne. Those four, Waterford need those four players on the pitch, because they don't have ready-made replacements. Like, Limerick lost Cian Lynch last year and were able to replace them and were able to go on and win the All-Ireland. Waterford need to keep those key men on the field. I think that's probably the big reason that Waterford haven't, succeeded in the round robin. They've had those injuries and they haven't had the strength and depth to cope with those losses.
Yeah, I know it might be a ridiculous question, but what will it take from Waterford to get off to a winning start on Sunday?
That's a big one, Matt.
This is a big one for you, Tom.
If I'm to be perfectly honest, Matt, I think it's probably going to take maybe a freak event, like maybe a Limerick red card. Definitely, Limerick to underperform and Waterford to overperform. I'd say it would probably take Waterford to maybe score a couple of goals. Particularly maybe from Deise and from Michael Kiley. I think, and then at the other end to keep the goals out as well for, someone like Conor Prunty to keep hold of Aaron Gillane. All those things I think will have to come together. I think the expectation is very low down here. I don't think anybody's expecting Waterford to win on Sunday, but to put it up to Limerick, to bring them down the stretch, to give a performance, I think Waterford would take that going into the Cork game in round 2.
It'll definitely take a top.
Hope we have a good game on Sunday, Tomás.
Absolutely, Matt. Absolutely.
Yeah. Before you go, Tomás, obviously you spoke in depth about the game Sunday, and you spoke about that bigger picture. Do you see Waterford getting out of Munster?
Yeah, it's so tricky, Jack. It's so tricky. Limerick, they're nailed on. Everybody will see Limerick qualifying, but you could make a strong case for any of the other four teams. Really, I was looking through it. I think Waterford could pick up wins against Cork and Clare. I think those are the two games could be targeting. So that might bring them onto 4 points, and that might just be enough to get them over the line. They're definitely hoping to come into the last game against Tipperary, that derby match or grudge match against Liam Cahill with something on the line. That'd be absolutely brilliant. So I think Waterford might sneak through on 4 points. I think they might come in third. I think Tipperary might come in second, and Limerick to top the table. So those three to come out.
Yeah, it's so hard to call, but it's what makes the Munster Championship so special. I think is that any team could beat any team, Limerick included, on their day. But Tomás, you've been a gentleman with your time. I'm sure we'll cross paths in Thurles this Sunday, and best luck for the year. Thanks a million for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Matt. Good to chat to you.
Lovely stuff.
Thanks a million. Talk on Sunday, Tom.